amazing Australians and the story of their lives. You're tuned to Lots to Chat About with Rosemary Peterswald.
Hello listeners and welcome. I'm delighted to say today that my guest is Danny Mayson-Kinder, co-founder of the charity Fly High Billie and Be Kinder. Fly High Billie is to honour the legacy of Danny and her husband Dave's daughter, an extraordinary 12-year-old who sadly died in an equestrian accident in 2016 when she was just 12 years old. Her legacy inspires and empowers children to make a difference by being kinder. Danny was named overall winner of the 2024 Shine Awards and has recently talked at the News Corps International Women's Day event. Welcome, Danny.
Yes, thank you, Rosemary, for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. Now, Danny, before we talk about Fly High Billie and Be Kinder, I'm sure our listeners would love to hear a little bit more about yourself. I mean, I believe you were born in the UK, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I was born in just outside of London to two wonderful parents, my mum and dad. I had a wonderful upbringing, two great brothers, an extended family. I had a very blessed life, really, a very happy childhood. And, I guess until I think I was 21 when I first left the UK and travelled around Canada. And then again at 25, I left on my big trip and went to New Zealand, America, New Zealand, and then Australia, and fell in love with the Whitsundays and ended up staying.
Oh, lovely. I thought you were going to say you fell in love with Dave. Where did you meet Dave?
He was in the Whitsundays, so I guess technically that was right.
Oh, lovely.
Dave and I was actually a dive instructor and became a skipper, and Dave is also a skipper, and we met in the Whitsundays. So, yes, we met there, stayed there, and had our two beautiful girls, Charlie and Billie.
Up in the Whitsundays?
Yes.
It's a wonderful area. I've sailed there many times myself, and it's a beautiful part of Australia. But Danny, now you and Dave got married, as you said, and you had two beautiful daughters. But sadly, your world was absolutely shattered in 2016 when you lost your beautiful 12-year-old daughter Billie. It was a tragic horse accident. But you ensured that her legacy lived on in the charity Fly High Billie, which is dedicated to promoting kindness, empathy and compassion in children. Please, tell us a little bit more about this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There was just something about Billie, and everyone that met Billie, and even those that didn't actually, would say that there's just something about her, and she always wanted to know more, be more, do more. And my dad would always say she was an old soul.
Right.
She just got people. She had so much empathy for animals, for people, and a lot of compassion. And when she died, it was actually her principal that came to me and said, look, I'd love to do a day for Billie. We'll call it To Be a Billie or the Billie Way.
Yes.
And it wasn't until I was then working on the workbooks that I even realised that Billie's name is actually Be Kinder. So her initial B for Billie, and our surname, although Kinder, is spelled Kinder. So that is where Be Kinder came, and seeing as though her legacy was all about kindness, it was sort of very serendipitous that no one had even realised that her name was actually Be Kinder. So even though the charity is called Fly High Billie, we actually trade as the Be Kinder Foundation.
Right. It was a freak accident, wasn't it? And Billie did say to you, look, it was just my time. I mean, I spent all my youth riding horses, and, many people have. And there is always a risk, but this wasn't really a risk, was it?
Well, no, Billie was actually the then CEO of Equestrian Australia. Even he said that Billie was one of, Australia's best young riders up and coming. And again, there was something about Billie and on a horse, and she was incredible. People would stop when Billie went in the ring and say, Billie's in. And yeah, it was a freak accident. It's never happened before, probably never happen again. And, I think we all know as we go through life, and the older we get, you hear of these things happening. And sometimes you see people walk away from accidents they should never walk away from. And sometimes the freakiest accidents, kill people. And
As Billie said, just her time, I suppose, wasn't it? And but
well,
to
I
lose
think we've probably all got a date on our head, don't we, at some point? So
I think, but I'm sure you're probably exactly right. But losing a child is one of the hardest blows, isn't it? And it sounds as though she was just a very, very special person, and her dream was to write a book, wasn't it? She was a great writer, you said, and in actual fact, she'd won a scholarship, hadn't she, to high school to further her studies in writing.
yes, she had, and she was always, if she wasn't reading or sitting on a horse, she was writing poetry or stories or painting or drawing. She was very creative, and yeah, she would come to me and her dad and say, Mum, I want to write a book. What can I write about? So after she died, obviously, she hadn't written her book, so we gathered up all her poems, stories, artworks, and put them into a beautiful book called Hope. And Hope was really just supposed to be, the family legacy, something that we could all keep a part of Billie.
Yes.
And then what happened was it started to sell. And
8,000 copies before you knew it.
Yes. Yeah, before we knew it. And it was then that people started coming back to us and saying that Billie's words had instigated conversations with their children that they didn't normally have. And, Billie was 12, and obviously she wrote about 12-year-old things, love, family, dreams, but she also talked about bullying and injustice and racism and even death. She was a deep old soul, and I think those words from a 12-year-old were instigating other children to open up maybe about their emotions or their feelings and emotions that maybe they don't even know they have. And it was then we thought, wow, if Billie was connecting and children were relating to her, what if we used her words as tools to help, basically teach kindness and empathy and compassion in primary schools? And, the world today is, well, it's a very strange place. It's a lot different than when Billie died 9 years ago. And, I think children today are inundated with, topics on wars and mental health issues and bullying and suicide.
Climate change and all that.
Climate change, yeah,
Yes.
It's just never ending. And, I think it's really important that we empower and inspire the younger generation to realise that they can all make a difference. And, the one thing that is working with, the workbooks and Be Kinder is that Billie is a young student just like them. And if she can make a difference and she has a voice, well, then so can they. And
Exactly.
it's quite remarkable. And because it's all about early intervention. So instead of band-aiding, the terrible statistics that we see and hear about, it's really about getting in early. And I mean, we're talking 3 years old.
Yes.
We had a lot of help from a beautiful lady called Dr. Kathy Harrison, who sadly passed away last year. And she was one of the chief advisors to Play School for over 26 years. And Kathy became a really good friend of mine, and she helped us put together all the workbooks. And, she strongly believed that you can teach empathy to children as young as 3. And I think that's what we have to do now. We have to try and get these young children to understand the implications of their actions and, what values are, and really live the values and understand the effects that they can have on other people.
I couldn't agree more. And as you say, I mean, parents can go on and on and on, but children sort of say, oh, yeah. But to have somebody who's a contemporary of theirs, or I know Billie was a bit older than a 3-year-old, but have somebody like Billie telling from a perspective of their own age.
Yes, I think it's very powerful when it comes down to that level. And, there's so many major changes now, the online world and the online, I mean, the horrific bullying that goes on online is,
it's
I can't imagine it. Yeah, it is terrible. And, we're hearing of 12-year-old girls and boys, but, taking their own lives because they're incessantly bullied. And it's terrible. I think we're all accountable, and every single one of us needs to do something to help make a difference.
Look, you are so right. I mean, I was going home on the train I come up to Brisbane to do this radio show once a week, and I was going home on the train, and I looked out the window and I saw must have been 5 or 6 school children sitting on a bench, and I nearly took a photo because it was a classic a scene. All of them were on their phones, whereas in the old days, I think possibly they would have been jostling or, at least chatting or whatever. But now life is lived through a phone, isn't it?
It is lived through a phone, and it's also lived through a different language. We're hearing now that they even speak differently. They're speaking in emojis, and
yes.
It's so far disconnected to how I grew up. And I think there's becoming a very big divide, and we have to be very careful that we don't stop connecting with our children. So whilst they're all connected, I think we're disconnecting. And I think it's a very big divide that needs to be addressed.
Going back to Sales of Hope and the workbooks, they've raised over $130,000, which has been donated to charities such as Bear Cottage, Children's Palliative Care Home, and Feel the Magic, which does support children's physical and mental health. That's a wonderful thing, Danny.
Yeah, look, to be honest, that was when we first started selling the book, obviously before the charity was even set up, we had all this money come in.
Yes.
And then we were like, well, what are we going to do with the money from all the books? And we started giving it to, we actually funded a couple of assistant dogs, one called Hope, funny enough, for a beautiful girl with cerebral palsy.
Right.
And one called Billie, which was for a war veteran with post-traumatic stress. And we also did give money to Feel the Magic and Bear Cottage and all those kind of things. But the charity has now organically grown, and that money now doesn't go to any other charities. It stays within Be Kinder, within our charity, and it's for really to donate these kindness resources for primary school children is where we're at. And it's all about that kindness, empathy and compassion. And our programs are really, headed in that early intervention space, and schools that can afford the resources buy them, and the ones that can't, we donate them.
Right. That's a wonderful thing to do. So tell us a little bit about the Walk for a Kinder World.
Yeah, so the Walk for a Kinder World, actually, we actually had the Night of Hope, which was our big fundraiser. And then, of course, COVID hit, and we couldn't do that. So we came up with the Walk for the Kinder World, which we hold on World Kindness Day. And again, that started as one of our fundraisers, and now that's also morphed into really just getting people to pledge to be kind, to get out and walk with someone, to connect. We're all about connection, and loneliness is one of the big, after mental health, loneliness is one of the biggest killers in Australia, and it's important that we do stay connected and we do, reach out and think of others, which is where our Be Kinder Day comes in. And Be Kinder Day is coming up on the 22nd of June, and that's really where everybody purchases one of Billie's beautifully illustrated Be Kinder Day cards. And they're only $1 each, and the idea is that you write a kind message to someone you care about. So again, it's putting pen to paper, getting off the phones and the texts, and really thinking about somebody else and writing that kind message and connecting with them.
So important. Our last guest on here actually was Martin Blake, who has started Groundswell Foundation, which is addressing loneliness right around the world. So we chatted about that. But Paul, of course, who is sight impaired, as many of our listeners are, would know exactly what it's like to have people be kinder. Wouldn't you, Paul, when you're out there in the big wild world of everybody pushing and shoving everywhere?
Would be good, yes.
Absolutely, to stop and sort of think for a moment about what it's like to walk in somebody else's shoes. Now,
that's exactly right. And I do. I always say that. Instead of saying to somebody, how are you today? It's really more of, what is it like to be you today? And I think it's about taking time and connecting, on those levels. And when Be Kinder talks about the impact of kindness, we don't want it to just be fluffy and soft gestures. It's really about shifting attitudes, systems, and the way that we value each other. We want to create communities, to create cultures where kindness is the foundation for everything, education, policy, leadership, community. And, people think, oh, that's all very nice, I'll be kind, but it's so important. If only people could understand that it's actually the fundamental value underlying everything.
Exactly. You tell a story about you were sitting somewhere with Billie, and there was a lady sitting on her own, and Billie asked you, or asked her, I should say, to join you at your table, and how touched that lady was.
Yeah, we were actually on a road trip back from Melbourne, and that's what I mean. Billie just would sit there and say, "Oh, Mummy, she's lonely. She's all by herself," and
Yes.
she got that. She felt that, and quite remarkable for a child so young,
Exactly, and we should all take a hint from that, very much so. Now, you're listening to Lots to Chat About. My name is Rosemary Peterswald, and my guest today is Danny Mayson-Kinder, co-founder of the charity Fly High Billie and Be Kinder Foundation. So, Danny, now, you were the overall winner in the Shine Awards. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, the Shine Awards are wonderful awards. They've been running for 8 years now, and they have been put together by Harvey Norman and News Corp, and it's really to highlight women in rural, regional areas doing great things in their communities. So I was very honoured. I got nominated. I didn't know I'd been nominated, actually by our development officer, and I then won one of the 8 categories, I was courage. And then I won overall, which was very exciting. So I was very humbled and honoured to do that. And it's been a wonderful few months getting to celebrate that and meet the other winners. And very, very honoured to be there.
It's a wonderful award, and congratulations. And then, of course, you were the keynote speaker, or one of the keynote speakers at the News Corp International Women's Day event.
Yes, that was a bit frightening.
I bet it was.
Obviously, guest speaking is not my forte, but I was again very honoured to have been invited and to tell our story, and everyone there was lovely, and it's just nice to have been, I guess, acknowledged, but the work, Billie and her charity has organically grown over the last 7 years, and to see it now being, I guess, taken seriously in the space of education, and being taken seriously in it's what's really needed and required for these children, but it's all Billie's words is, very bittersweet, I guess, for me. It's wonderful, but I wish it wasn't happening, but here we are.
Exactly, if it could, been in other circumstances. But now death in the family, of course, affects everyone, Danny, and you have got another beautiful daughter, Charlie. And I believe the children's grief camp, Feel the Magic, helped her to recover from the tragedy of losing her sister. And Charlie actually mentors at the camps there now herself.
Yeah, look, Feel the Magic were, I guess, a saviour for us. I don't even really remember an awful lot about that time, but I know that, the day Billie died, I swore I would get up every day for Charlie, and I did. But it was I can't even put it into words what kind of a time it was. And I mean, poor Charlie was just about to turn 16, and obviously the image of seeing her parents shattered and on the floor is not what you want your child to remember. But unfortunately, that's what happened, and real things happen to real people, and I wanted to try and teach her, I guess, more than anything, resilience. And I didn't want Billie's death to define Charlie. And it was very hard going for a long time. And Feel the Magic are a wonderful charity that basically, they help children, I believe it's 7 to 17, to cope with their grief. And they were incredible with Charlie. And they connected with her. She found her tribe. And, she did go back and mentor for quite a long time. But now Charlie is a captain, a skipper of commercial boats.
Oh, really? All right, yes. In Australia?
In Australia. So
Yes.
normally the boat is based in Sydney. At the moment they're on the Gold Coast, and then they go up to the Whitsundays and then Port Douglas.
Yes.
But yes, she works on a private super yacht, and she has a crew of 6, and I am just so proud of her. It's amazing where she's come and what she's achieved. She's like Billie. They are both, I'm proud of them both, and they're both incredible women. And she actually just she was picked out as International Women's Day, for leading the way in women skippers. There's only 2% of the global captains in Australia are women. So
And how old is Charlie?
Charlie's 24, so one of the
Right.
youngest.
Yes.
Yeah, she's doing incredible things. and
That's
we are very,
incredible
very
for somebody at such a young age.
Yes, she's remarkable. She's amazing.
And Danny, now you're in Tasmania now.
We are, yes.
When did you move there?
Well, Whitsundays was our home, but we ended up travelling. The girls sort of had won most of the state titles in Queensland, and so Charlie kind of begged me to go to Sydney to ride in an international competition down there. And
Yes.
so we did. We packed up the 2 horses, the 2 kids, the 2 dogs into a truck, and we homeschooled for a year, and we travelled. And anyway, we got to Sydney, and of course it's the horse mecca in Australia, and the girls wanted to stay, so we enrolled them in school, and we sort of ended up here. I wanted to go back, but they all didn't.
Right.
And then, of course, Billie's accident happened, and then we kind of got stuck because, we tried to keep everything the same for Charlie, her friends, her school. And then the charity started and grew and grew and grew, and it wasn't until 2 years ago we employed a development officer in New South Wales, and it sort of became apparent after COVID that you can work from anywhere, which
Yes.
I do. And so Dave my husband got offered a job in Tasmania, and we came down here and just fell in love with the beauty of it. And now, finally, after 7 years since Billie died, we were renting and being bumped from place to place, and now we have, I guess, never a home without her, but the best we can do, and her photos are back on the wall, and it's a beautiful space, and it's a beautiful place, and we overlook the ocean and the beach, and
It's a lovely part of the world. I lived there for 35 years.
Did you?
And yes, and went back recently for a month and drove all around. And we were very lucky because you'd had a lot of rain, but we were the beneficiaries of beautiful green everywhere, even though it was mid-January. But it's a beautiful island, isn't it, to live in?
Oh, it's just, I don't know, I feel like I can breathe here. There's just something about the place. It's very magical. And
Are you up north or down south?
I'm down south.
Oh, right. Yeah, we lived on the Tasman Peninsula when we first went there for a number of years, and then Hobart.
Okay, well, I'm in between.
Lovely.
In
Oh,
between
well,
the two.
a beautiful, beautiful part of the world. Now, Danny, you've done the most wonderful thing, with the gift of giving of love and for everyone. But tell me, how do you cope? I know you said, and we've talked about it, you made a promise that you'd get up every morning for Charlie. But that surely is not easy to do, although sounds as though it's a little bit easier there now that you've got your own haven there in Tasmania. But at the beginning, it must be hard. And I ask you this question, which I know is hard for you, but there are other people out there as well that are grieving. And I just wondered, do you have any particular hints?
Oh, where does one start? It's indescribable, to be honest. I'm not who I was. I'm a very different person to the Danny before Billie died. And, I think the sad reality of life is that people can't cope with me. They didn't cope with me. And I think people in general don't cope with grief.
Yes.
There's that understanding of, well, it's been 9 years, move on. You'll get over it, you'll whatever. You don't.
No.
You never get over it. And, people think it gets better, but actually it gets worse. And the reason it gets worse is because everybody else moves on and you don't. And, Billie will always be my daughter, and I will forever wish it was different. And I think the really hard thing is you have to reinvent yourself.
Yes.
I reinvented myself to fit into society, because if I don't do that, if I walked around crying most days, which,
Yes.
in between things I do, of course. But people don't deal with that, so you kind of, you put on a face. And I think most people actually put on a face each day. Everybody has a story. That's one thing I've learned since Billie died. Is everybody has something. And, I just wish people would be more honest and more open and really talk,
Yes.
But society doesn't actually allow that. We're all supposed to, for some reason, be happy and show that our lives are perfect, and it's very messed up, actually.
To show a face to the world. Very sadly, my sister lost her beloved son when he was only very young, in his early 20s, and she said exactly like you, it does get harder. I mean, everyone says, oh, yes, time goes on and time fixes everything, but it doesn't, because there's birthdays and other days and whatever, which bring it home, isn't it?
But it's every day, Rosemary,
Yes.
to be honest. I just went up to Sydney and saw Charlie, and, we go for dinner, and you sit there and the hole is so big,
Yes.
and all you can wish is that Billie was sitting there too, and there's never I don't know, that, I had a lovely time with Charlie, of course I did, but I'm always wishing that Billie was there too,
Yes.
And that's really hard, and she does the same,
Exactly, that's what Jill says. But I think one of the things that have come across very much in our chat today is the legacy that Billie has left behind. And one of the terrific sayings, as I said, that you mentioned and I mentioned earlier, is to wonder what it's like to walk in other people's shoes. And as you said, when somebody is suffering grief, or whether somebody's suffering from a terminal illness or what, don't avoid them. Because that's what's so hard, you think, oh gosh, what will I say? I can't think of anything I can say, but even just a smile is terrific, isn't it?
And I'm the same. I mean, I know people that have lost children since Billie, and people that lose their wives. And I don't know what to say. I mean, it is really hard, but you don't have to say anything. And the only thing I could say to people is just be there, just sit. Just sit there. You don't even have to speak, and sometimes actually it's better if you don't.
Yes.
Generally you say the wrong thing. But just sit and be with someone, or just let them know that you're around. Even if you send them an emoji each day.
Yes.
It doesn't have to say anything. It's just that they're there. And, like you say, I had people, they would cross the street rather than come up to me, and what kind of society are we that we can't talk to people, in their time of need? It's that's what I was saying earlier. We're losing that connection and that real ability to talk to each other.
Well, look, I couldn't agree more. I came up on the train. I talked about the young ones on the train, but I must admit I'm as guilty as any, sitting on the train reading a book or on my phone. Whereas, yes, in the old days, we would chat. Actually, Martin Blake, who I said was we had on last week, actually, the founder of Groundswell, he said that they've started a queue in Holland, in the Netherlands, a slow queue at the supermarket, so that elderly people can smile and chat and whatever to each other. Yes, I thought it was terrific.
Do you know, my dad, we used to laugh growing up because, everywhere you went, Dad would talk to everybody.
Yeah.
Oh, God. He'd find a friend everywhere. It didn't matter where you were, if you got on coach,
Yes.
Dad would find a friend. And we always used to laugh. And, I look back now and I think my dad was the most remarkable man. And, he got it. He got it.
Yes.
He just got people too. He was like Billie. They got each other, and they gave their time, and they actually really were interested in other people. And I think that's what we lack now,
Exactly, and it is, I mean, it's just so important that, as Martin, said, it's not just young people or elderly people. It is young people. It is head of huge firms. It's all sorts of people that are lonely and can benefit by your program of Be Kinder. To people. Now, gosh, Danny, I could go on talking to you for a long, long time, but sadly, we are running out of time. But just quickly, let me know, how are you enjoying the public speaking? I mean, you're obviously very good at it.
No, I really don't think I am.
Oh, well, if this is any better, you are.
Well, I don't mind being interviewed, but when I actually have to just stand there and talk, I lose my train of thought and I forget what I wanted to say. And I'm not too great at it at the moment, but I'll get there.
I'm sure I'd say you're pretty good at it. And the story and the message, actually, I should say, that you were getting across on behalf of Billie and, of course, Charlie and you and Dave is, I think it's just a tremendous thing. So thank you, Danny Mayson-Kinder, founder of the charity Fly High Billie and Be Kinder organisation, for being my guest today. And this program was recorded in the studios of 4RPH Reading Radio in Brisbane for syndication around Australia. Thank you so much, Danny, for being my guest.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, Rosie. I really appreciate it.
It's been wonderful. And thank you, Paul, and thank you, listeners.
Thank you. Great friends and great chats. That was another Lots to Chat About with Rosemary Peterswald. Stay tuned next week for another amazing chat.